Hey, welcome to Lessons from the Boot. I'm your host, Ms. Brittany, and every week I dive deep into the personal growth and development that living here in South Italy teaches me, in the hope that you can gain some inspiration from it wherever you may be in the world. 2024 is nearly upon us, and unless you've been hiding under a rock, I'm pretty certain you would have seen how social media especially is suddenly awash with personal reflections and lessons learnt from the past 12 months, as well as optimism and goal setting for the coming year. But what I find really interesting is how different would our lives actually look if we did this on a more frequent basis throughout the year, rather than waiting for December to roll around every single year in order to become really intentional with our reflections and objectives? This principle is something that was covered in a book that I read around this time last year, actually, and it's called The 12-Week Year by Moran and Lennington. I'll put the name of the book in the show notes below in case you want to get a copy for yourself. It is an excellent read. But essentially, the authors of this book encourage readers to change the way that you perceive a traditional year. So traditionally, when we look at a year, we see it as 12 months. We see it as an entire 12 months in which to set goals and objectives and achieve them. And we see December as the end and January as the beginning. This book encourages you to see your year not made up as 12 months, but made up of 12 weeks. In other words, 3 months. And the idea is that over the course of a traditional year, you would have had 4 complete years if you follow the principles from this book. Now, there are a couple of theories that I really like from this book as to why this principle is so effective for goal setting. The first is that because you are setting fresh goals every 3 months, you are more likely to achieve the goals that you set, because primarily you are interested in what you choose to achieve as a goal in that period of your life. What can be really difficult with goal setting is that we sit down in December and we look ahead to this empty blank page of a year that's yet to come. And it can feel very intimidating to set goals and objectives as to what we want to achieve 6, 7, 8, 9 months from now, because honestly, as human beings, we are incredibly fickle. We chop and change like the wind. We blow hot and cold. And so what we're interested in now in December of the previous year may not necessarily look the same way come June or July of the following year, which is why this principle is really effective, because your goals are fresh in that period and they are for 3 months. So it's more likely that you're still going to be interested in something 2, 3, 4 weeks from now than it is insane that you're going to be interested in something 6 or 7 months from now. So I feel that it's a really effective method for this reason. But also what's effective about it is that if you manage to achieve the goals that you set yourself in every 3-month year that you experience, by the end of a conventional 12-month year, you would have achieved so much more than an average person who sets a goal for an entire year. Because whether we realize it or not, our activities expand to the time in which we have available to do them. I don't know about you, but if I only have 30 minutes in which to do something, I am laser focused on achieving what it is I need to do within that time. And whether I finish just on time or a little bit before is beside the point. The fact is, if I only have a very short period of time in which to get something done, I'm all about getting that thing done. Whereas if I have a bit more time on my hands, whether that be a few hours, days, or even weeks, my activities tend to expand to fill that available time. And so something that, with a bit more focus could have taken 2 hours ends up taking like 2 days just because I've got the time available to do it. And this is the theory and principle with goal setting as well. If we set a goal for an entire 12 months, it's probably going to take us that entire time to achieve it if we haven't abandoned it or forgotten it along the way. Whereas if you have a 3-month goal setting regime, you're more likely to achieve it because you have a limited period of time and your focus is more immediate on the goals that you are wanting to achieve. So there is a lot of scientific and psychological evidence backed to this technique. And I really, really found it very useful for me, especially at the beginning of this year, because although I did fall off the wagon a little bit, mainly due to work commitments, I have decided that I am going to readopt this principle into 2024 just because I found it so effective for the first 3 months that I did follow this principle. So when I take it back to the first 3 months of 2023, I created a set of merchandise completely from scratch with no previous experience. I sourced an online shop provider, designed my online shop, marketed my online shop, and then opened my online shop in about a month and a half. As well as that, I also created an Italian study regime, which I managed to stick to every single day for the entire 3 months that I followed this. And I have to be honest, that alone was enough for me to realise just how effective this method is, because especially with creating merchandise and opening a shop, some people that can take like a couple of months at best. At worst, it can take like 6 months, maybe even a year, depending on how focused the person really is. So I realised just how effective this principle is, and which is why I want to readopt it again in 2024 and actually stick to it for the entire year, which means I would have had 4 years rolled into one, which is pretty darn special if you think about it. Like this excitement we feel in December, because there is a tangible excitement in the air at this time of year. People are very optimistic, people are looking ahead, people are reflective, they're thinking about their lessons that they've learned and the successes they've had and the things they might have wanted to do differently. You can experience that every 12 weeks. And that is something really special, because whether we care to admit it or not, I do think that we forget moments throughout the year. As much as we may document things on social media or have a journal or whatever practice we follow, there are pockets of time that we do forget about, because 12 months, as much as it isn't an extremely long time, when you think about the individual moments that make up our life, it is quite a long time to remember every single thing that we experienced, every emotion that we had, every lesson that we learnt. And so when people do their yearly roundup, it's usually the big standout moments that they capture, because essentially it's very difficult to remember all the little things, all the little moments that we've had when you're sitting there in December trying to rack your brains as to what you were doing in January and February. Whereas with this method, you are more likely to remember those moments because you kind of track your progress on a weekly basis, and you can capture like your lessons and learnings and things that you want to change. And so as a result, by the time you arrive at the end of your 12 weeks, those lessons and those takeaways are fresh, and they're something that you can adopt as you go into your next 12-week year. So it's a really powerful principle, and I wanted to record this episode today to encourage you to rethink how you approach your goal setting for 2024. Now, goal setting isn't for everyone. I must admit, I don't feel that people here in South Italy especially are as into goal setting as much as, I don't know, people in the UK are, or perhaps in other countries around the world, because whenever I speak to anybody about what their objectives are for 2024 here, people are either like, oh, I don't really know, or I'm just met with like a blank stare. So I kind of feel people here in the South especially live more in the present moment. And as much as I really agree with that principle, because there are a lot of beautiful lessons you can learn from being present, I also feel that you miss out on life a little bit if you solely live in the present. Because in order to have certain experiences, in order to make positive change or have growth and development, you need to make some plans, and you need to have some kind of goals and objectives that you're working towards. It's just natural. It's the evolution of humans. You know, if we always do what we've always done, we'll always have what we've always got. Whereas if you want to have a different experience, then you have to start to do things in a different way. And that often requires planning and structure. And when I look back at my own life, I think the things that I've achieved wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't sat down every year and set goals. And even though before I read this book, I used to follow the traditional goal setting method of an entire year, it still gave me something that I could cling on to, like something that I could focus myself with and work towards, because otherwise I feel like we drift through life with no real purpose. We kind of, every day is the same, and for me that's like a living hell. So for this, I like to have a purpose and a focus and something that propels me and guides me through life, because I think that's how you really gain the full richness from it. So I feel that wherever you are in the world, even if you are in a country where goal setting isn't as big a deal as it is in other countries, it doesn't mean that you can't experiment with this technique and see what you can achieve from it, and see if it can inspire you to make some positive change in your life and development and growth, whatever it may be for you. This is my last episode of 2023. I hope that you've been enjoying my podcast series so far this year, and I look forward to recording some more great episodes for you in 2024. So I wish you a happy new year, and I will see you in the next episode.